Hey everyone. So I wanted to do something similar to what I did to this Idril video, um, where I talk about the making of a track. But I was thinking maybe it would be cooler if I kind of did it right from the beginning. So rather than kind of recap a hero's lore and kit, and then talk about how I connected it into my music, maybe I could actually start by kind of taking a first look for myself, at least kind of a first look at these things, and then jump into the beginning of a composing session and actually create those connections real time to some extent, so you get maybe a bit more insight into the process. And that, like, it's a format I could use down the road potentially in a way where I'm like pulling a character, and then whoever I pull, I go into one of these sorts of sessions. So kind of gives it that little bit of spontaneity factor. Just trying something different. So you can let me know how this format compares to the look after, where everything's already there. Of course, I will have the final track and everything, and it should be playing in the background right now if future Peter has gotten his job done. So the other thing I'm trying here is there is currently, as you can see on the screen, an Assassin's Creed crossover with Watcher of Realms. It is a series I have played a fair bit of, not every game, but quite a few of them, and I quite enjoy playing these games. Even, I know Origins and Odyssey, those are the last two I played. I know they got a bad rap for being like too open and kind of listless and just kind of droned on, but I actually did enjoy them. I thought that the environment was awesome, and things could get a bit repetitive, especially if you're a perfectionist like me. But I still quite enjoyed them, and so I'm as excited as many others to see this collaboration happening. But as part of it, there's a little creative contest for people to try and, mark the occasion with some sort of art. And, there's lots of examples of, cosplay or concept art or what have you. And I always like to throw my hat in the ring with something musical, even if it hasn't been explicitly added. So that's what I'm going to try here. Then that being said, this means I am going to do an Assassin's Creed character next. So let's jump into this. It is the first one that I have pulled, and I have kind of gotten to use her, but not really in much detail. So I just pulled her today. I kind of threw her into one of the event boss fights, but I don't really fully understand her kit. I haven't actually looked through it, and I haven't looked through her lore either. So let's take a quick look at this today, and then I will pull up a session in my DAW and start kind of the beginnings of a track. So we've got Eivor, Varin's daughter. Now this is a character from Assassin's Creed Valhalla, which I did not play, unfortunately. I played, there's kind of this trilogy of games of Origins and Odyssey and Valhalla, and I did play the first two. Never quite got to this one just because sales didn't work out and that sort of thing. But had things been right, I would have played it, and I still would like to play it actually. But I think in this game there was sort of a bit of a character selector similar to Odyssey, where you could pick a male or female sort of version, and I think the female character was more of the canonical character. So we've got Eivor, Varin's daughter, the Wolf-Kissed, which will be the title of the track when I get to it. And let's see, we have a fighter, a Watcher, Northerner dual faction. So that is a fun combo. I have one or two other characters with this combo. And I think from a musical perspective, the Idril track means I have done some Watcher track before. I have not done a Northerner one yet, but I already had an idea of what I wanted it to be. So this should be good. Let's jump to the lore first. Eivor Varnsdottir was born in the Age of Vikings, daughter to Verin and Rosta, minor nobles sworn to King Styrbjorn Sigvaldsson of the Raven clan. Like many Viking children, Eivor was raised on myths and sagas of heroism, but her childhood was cut short when Kjotve the Cruel and his wolf clan raided her village and slaughtered her parents in front of her eyes. Eivor would have been next if Sigurd, son of Styrbjorn, had not fled with her on horseback. It was during their escape that she earned the nickname Wolf-Kissed after surviving a vicious wolf bite. Taken in by Styrbjorn, Eivor was raised alongside Sigurd as one of his own. From that day on, two things burned within her: the hunger for glory and the flames of vengeance. Eivor grew into a formidable shield maiden, fiercely loyal and stubbornly independent. While Sigurd traveled across Europe, Eivor raided Kjotve's lands, honing her skills and tactics with every victory. Sorry, brief aside, I can just imagine the gameplay there. That is clearly a direct call-in. When Sigurd finally returned to Norway, he was accompanied by the enigmatic Basim ibn Ishak and his apprentice Hitham. They taught Eivor about the Hidden Ones and how to use the hidden blade. Later, with the backing of Guthorm the Wise, Eivor finally slew Kjotve in a duel and avenged her parents. But this victory did not bring her peace. Styrbjorn, not wishing to see his lands burned to the ground, bent the knee to King Harald Fairhair, a decision that enraged much of the Raven clan. For Eivor, it was a betrayal of everything the clan stood for and a reminder of her father's cowardice. She and Sigurd gathered their people and sailed west to England. They settled in Leicestershire and founded Ravensthorpe. In this new land of shifting loyalties and hidden dangers, Eivor became much more than a warrior. She forged alliances, thwarted conquerors, and uncovered conspiracies. It was no longer glory that drove her, but something deeper: the responsibility of a leader to her people. Okay, very cool. There is definitely a lot to go on here. I'm sure there's like a fair bit of summarizing of what happens in the game Assassin's Creed Valhalla, which means lots of story beats to hit. So I think coming up with a structure for the song should be pretty straightforward. I'll have to have this up as reference when I'm actually making the song, and that'll be off screen when I'm doing it. But for now, let's take a quick look at all this other stuff in her kit. So, as I said before, she's a fighter. Her talent here is immune to stun. Upon killing an enemy target, gains 1 stack of blood bounty, which is this effect which stacks up to 5 times when the ultimate's not activated. After reaching 5 stacks, each additional stack gained restores an extra 8% max rage to the hero. When activating the ultimate, each stack increases the hero's final damage during the ultimate by 8%. Okay, so stacks of these are good. And when she gains it, she has a 20% chance to grant a shield equal to 20% of the hero's attack to the hero and all adjacent allied heroes for 10 seconds. The shield strength granted to the hero by this effect is doubled during the ultimate. Automatically consumes 2 stacks of blood bounty to cast an extra Axe Tempest. Axe Tempest cast this way inflicts vulnerability physical damage on hit, but cannot dispel the target's buffs. Okay, cool. Let's now, before I move on, I don't know yet if I'm going to try and directly tie talents in. I'm kind of reading them for completion's sake, but I'm mostly going to be focused on the abilities here when I'm tying it into the track. So let's see what we've got for those. So basic physical attack, which just deals 100% damage to one enemy. The ultimate is Odin's Wrath. Quite an increased range here. While active, all attacks ignore 40% of the target's defense, and the hero restores 4% max HP when her basic attack deals damage. So, yep, that'll be interesting. So there is basically it's to her attack, and she's gonna ignore defense while restoring HP, but not necessarily some sort of big event, like big burst sort of thing. So I'll have to figure that in to whatever motif I come up with or sound that I find. Okay. Passive Bestial Fury. Each basic attack reduces the subsequent basic attack interval by 1% and provides 1% damage reduction, stacking up to 10 times and lasting for 10 seconds. When this effect reaches full stacks, the hero also gains 1 stack of blood bounty for every 2 basic attacks. Okay, so this is somebody you want hitting a lot, so building attack speed, and so that'll probably push the BPM of the track a little bit higher, knowing that. Yeah, and there will be this probably some sort of motif, like maybe arpeggiations or ostinatos or something on this thing. Okay, we'll see how that goes. And then last thing, another passive Axe Tempest. Every 32 seconds, the next basic attack throws an axe at targets within the ultimate range instead. The axe can bounce 2 times, dealing 210% damage and dispelling 1 buff from targets hit. When there are no ground enemies within the basic attack range, this skill's cooldown recovers 100% faster. The axe prioritizes enemies with lower max HP, and its damage multiplier against enemies with HP below 50% is increased by 33%. Okay, so this is really going after kind of not executing, but taking out enemies that are on the lower end, rather than dealing damage to new units or full HP units. This is a good ability to finish units off. Cool. Okay, so that's the kit. Next, I'm gonna pull up my DAW and we'll kind of talk through what I'm thinking the game plan is for all of this stuff. And I will do a little bit of kind of live testing of virtual instruments and putting in the structure and that sort of thing. Just give you an idea of what my workflow is like. So yeah, moving over to the DAW. All right, here we are in FL Studio. So I was just looking through the description again, the lore description, and I think the first couple things I like to start with in this sort of composing. There's different ways I do it depending on what I'm composing and like what genre it is, what my concept is, what the goal is. In this case, the way I'm doing it for Watchers of Realms characters, I'm going to start with getting the story in the lore, or getting the important bits of lore into a structure. And I'm also going to set the basic things like the tempo and potentially a time signature. I think in this case, we will keep it 4/4 as a sort of, battle Viking feel would probably be 4/4. Maybe I'm wrong about that, but that's the thought I have in my head about this. Now, again, because she seems to be a character that thrives on good attack speed, I will probably have a relatively high tempo here. FL Studio defaults to 140. I think I'll drop it down a bit. I like to go with these weird numbers that I seem to remember from a metronome when I was a kid. So 132 here. Yeah, I think that sounds good. Rather than for like a marksman having this sort of nimble feeling. I think for a fighter, it's a lot more straightforward. Can obviously change a little bit character to character, but that's the base template I have in my head for the characters. So I think the main story beats to get the structure in. What I'm going to do is put markers in the playlist, and they will not necessarily stay where I put them, and some of them may merge or go away. But I like to do this. Gives me a general idea of where I'm going with things. And I guess I've done this a lot now, so I do have a decent sense of how I want different sections to go before I even get there. So the first bit is obviously parents slaughtered. I think that's an important piece of her backstory, and that will provide a few bars of a nice kind of introduction to the track as well. Something pretty, I don't know, desperate sounding to kick us off. I think I also wanted to have a little bit in here about this wolf bite. That she survives it. So I think I'm going to keep it something like 4 bars is maybe a bit too short for that. We'll give a little 8-bar intro. Let's start with this number and see how that goes. Wolf bite we'll keep shorter. We'll start with a 4-bar section. Then growing into a shield maiden. Okay, so oh my gosh, shield maiden. So I think this one will go longer. And this will probably start to bring out some sort of main theme. I guess in a way, there's this similarity to what I did with Idril, because she kind of grows up into a warrior and then has some sort of event and is triumphant. And I see the same sort of thing happening with Eivor here. I can't imagine that's gonna that's gonna be a common thing, I'm sure. So let's see if I give that 4 bars. Let's give that 16 bars here to start with. The next important thing I think from her story is the meeting of the hidden ones, or the revealing of the hidden ones. Yes, that is definitely key for an Assassin's Creed character to actually find out about the assassins. Quite important. I think we will probably, based on the sort of lore description, I think this will be another longer section of 16 bars. I'm probably going to go back and readjust this because of the BPM of the track. So these will go by faster than some of the other tracks I'm used to making. But anyways, regardless, the next big thing is the duel with Kjotve. That's kind of the climax of the character arc, I would say. So we'll leave that in as another 16 bars at the moment. And then I'm going to call this next part Bittersweet Triumph, because though she wins the duel, we have Styrbjorn who decides to kind of bend the knee to this other king and make everybody mad and kind of leave the victory a little bit sullied, I guess, for Eivor, because she's won this big battle, and you know, her I guess trusted friend has done something that feels like a bit of a betrayal. So she won, but it's not super happy right now. And then we are sailing to England and being a leader. England. Okay. So those are probably the story beats. And now I think because of the BPM, everything is a little bit more compressed. So I'll probably start by kind of doubling the length of these sections. And then I don't think all of them will make sense to be double length, but probably most of them. So I'll start there. I'll double this length and then we'll see how it ends up in the final product. And like I said, I set this out, but I'm not completely rigid about it. It's just, it gives me like a target, something to think ahead to, and a way to organize my thoughts. And if I deviate, I deviate. And most of the time I do, but it just helps me organize when I'm doing these sorts of story-based tracks. Okay. Now, on to the next thing I'll do here is bring in an element representing water and an element representing the Northerners. Again, these are sort of like launching points that I'm going to bring in. They aren't necessarily going to be the only things I bring in to represent these factions, but they are sort of things I always want to bring in just to give me a starting point. So for this, I'm going to pull up my sampler, bring in contact. What I've decided actually for both of these factions, they will start with the same instrument, which is called the Orchestra Complete. It is a very nice kind of quick sketching composition tool, because I do this as a hobby. I don't do it full time. So if I had to orchestrate every piece of every song, it would just take way too long. There are certain projects where I will do it. And honestly, it's fun. I do actually really enjoy doing it when I get into it. When you have the time to sit down and just get every individual instrument's kind of notes in, figure out some interplays on your own, get them to fit together. It's a lot of fun, actually. It just takes a lot of time, and having three small kids in the house and a full-time job that's completely unrelated to composing makes it really tough to find that time for everything. So I go to tools like this to, help give me some of these backbones that I need. Now, in the Orchestra Complete, we are going to have two different things we're looking for, one each for the factions. So we'll start with the Watcher, who are a bit more of this. I'm taking it as like just this general heroic sort of thing. So I'm going to look at the bass library in this instrument, and I am going to probably give it, let me think, because there's sort of this assassin thing around here, I do want to have some mysterious element around her, but probably action as well. So I've it kind of narrows it down to these animated orchestra presets, which are going to give us like an interesting orchestration, not just a rhythmic one. There'll be a bit more to it. Based on the names, it would be hard not to pick this one. I don't know what it sounds like, but this name fits the story really well. So I kind of just want it to work. Let's just play a couple notes here. Okay. I think I can work with this. Yep. I think this will be a good one. And again, I kind of have to for the name. We'll do this. Okay, and here's when I bring in a new instrument. I like to keep things organized in a. Now let's give it this. In a system. So I'm going to give it kind of a gold because this is a watchguard thing. This is now getting into some of the flstudio things that I do, but I like to assign everything to an instrument track. I have certain keyboard shortcuts that for things that I do a lot, that help me with my workflow. So just knowing when you right click and you can use the shortcut A to assign to an instrument track, got it attached to the mixer and have something in the playlist represent it now. I think that kind of makes it in line with what other digital audio workstations tend to do, whereas FL Studio starts you off in this more pattern-based mode. But I always like to kind of create these sorts of links. So we'll start there. So that is one thing. I'm going to copy this because I'm using the same orchestra bass instrument for a northern thing. So let's just go back to here. Now I'm going to use the strings of winter. So whereas the watchguard is going to have this just generally heroic sound, I'm going to get the northerners to have this. I know it's like too obvious, but this sort of icy, still not delicate necessarily, because sometimes the icy becomes delicate. You start to go with like string harmonics and things like that. I don't want them to be delicate, especially given that they are known for being good tanks. Not exactly delicate faction, but I do want that sort of icy feeling. And I want it to have, like a bit of an edge and a bit of robustness. So at least one of the starting points I'm going to go with is this Strings of Winter library within the Orchestra Complete. Now, this is a pretty kind of strong melody, like driving. Doesn't have too much like flourishing in it. It is relatively straightforward, so maybe I could get away with another animated orchestra here. I'm going to go back to Mysterious. And let's not go necessarily action. Let's see what comes out here. If there's anything, I think I like either Better Stay Hidden or The Truth Comes Out. Let me see how this one sounds. Okay, this is a slower sort of thing. Okay, keep that one in mind. Let's see how this Better Stay Hidden sounds. Okay, I like this one better. I think the first one maybe would go like in tandem a little bit easier in a way, but I think knowing that there's sort of this moment where you find out about the hidden ones, I feel like this is a good sort of like underpinning to get that started. So I'm going to go with this one. Better Stay Hidden. I'll give the disclaimer now that all of the choices I make now may not be the final choices that get into the final track, but I feel pretty good about these two. Okay, so those are kind of basic Watcher Northerner things. As I've said, I might put more in to represent these factions, and even like other things I'm putting in general. I will try and keep one of these two factions in mind when I'm putting them in. Before I jump into the kit, there is one other thing I really wanted to add, which is actually the it's not related at all to the factions or the kit. It is the Viking theme. I have like an instrument that and it's even called Valhalla Pluckscape or Stringscape. And I reviewed this a while ago, and I really liked this part of the instrument I was reviewing. This one specific thing really stood out. I haven't had a chance to really use it in a track yet. Yeah, so I want to throw this in. I'll probably try and find one or two other Viking sounding elements to put into this track, but at the very least, this one. Yeah, we'll throw this in. I'm going to give it sort of this color. Okay, so we got those. Moving on to the kit, there are basically the basic attack. I'm not going to put something on that there was nothing really special about it, the way it was written. But I am probably going to put something in specifically around the blood bounty, in addition to the two passive abilities, the Axe Tempest and Bestial Fury, and then obviously into the ultimate. So my first thought, what I'm going to go for here, and again, the Watcher and Northerners are going to both be more like organic sounds. I'm not going to get too heavy into synths for either of these factions. So I think from the description of the kit, these are probably going to be more like motifs. So I think the Axe Tempest, I am probably going to want to have like a sound, like maybe an effect or something. And the Bestial Fury is probably going to make its way into some like, not accelerandos specifically, but like repetition of notes that maybe gets more and more intense. And so those are maybe going to be more like motifs. Yeah, and then on the ultimate, we've got essentially a beefing up of the basic attacks. So we're ignoring defense and we are restoring HP. So I think there's going to have to be some sort of sustained component to represent restoring HP. That's how I'm going to make a connection there. Maybe there's going to be a bit of a pad. Maybe some synth will come into this one because it is Odin's Wrath. Odin is a Norse god who's otherworldly, and I think it's a good excuse to bring a synth in. And attacks ignoring defense. So I think we're going to have probably like some sort of spiccatos or harsh notes that get in there. So maybe just for the sake of this video, I will kind of bring in a couple things around that and then around the ultimate here. And then I think I'll call it. I will work on the track offline and then I'll come up with the final version, and maybe do a little overview at that point, in addition to releasing the track on its own as a standalone video. So let's just pull this orchestra up a bit. this particular instrument, the BBC Symphony Orchestra, I really like it. It doesn't necessarily have a lot of bite. It's almost perfect all the time for the sci-fi stuff I do, especially the more majestic sort of sci-fi stuff. But when we get into like action, it's good, but I don't know if it's the top choice all the time. So I'm going to let's just pull in a spiccato on the violins here. Yeah, so sounds pretty good. So I think I'll pull in all of the strings here. Maybe this is where I'll do a bit of orchestration. I may, we'll see. I may pull it into a flstudio patcher instance where all of them kind of just follow each other, but I feel like it might be worth orchestrating. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to go Odin's Wrath. You know what? I'm not going to name it based on that because it'll be more of a motif. So I'm just going to basically bring out each of these individually. So I won't go through this whole process right now. So it'll be kind of mechanical and boring. I'm going to just copy this over 4 more times and swap over to the different string bits. So we'll get that in there. And I will probably put in some brass as well. Maybe all of them, all 5. We have, I'm just showing this. So the horns, the trumpets, the tenor trombones, bass trombones, and tuba. I might pull all 5 in, but I may also just leave it at like the trombones, the bass and tenor trombones. Actually, that might be a good place to put in something else Viking-y. So I am going to take these notes, string spiccatos, some brass, and something Viking-y. I am not fully familiar with all of the Viking-y things I have in my toolkit. I know of a couple places I can go. So in addition to this place, this mythos is what it's called. There are a couple of other instruments in here that might work as well from a Viking sort of sounding perspective. So some of these other ones, like I don't know about the jaw harp, but the lyre and the tagelharpa might fit this situation. And in fact, I think I had like a very Viking-y thing in mind when I wrote a demo for this instrument. There is some nice vocals in this pack. I don't know if I might actually bring in the Ice Queen vocals. That might actually be a good, shift this down. That might be a good little Viking / Odin, because the other thing about gods, besides being otherworldly, like ethereal and going to the pads, is you can also go to vocals. So let me just bring this in. Now the tricky thing about this one is it'll be like samples. So I really like it, but I don't have full control. They're going to be phrases. So if I go to, let's see, E minor here. So I think I can really work with them. I may also just grab the direct samples rather than play them through the instrument. But I'm going to do this. Ice Queen. Just to make sure I've got that down. Yeah. good. Okay. So let me see. We're at about 18 minutes of the pulling instrument piece in. I think this is gonna be at risk of droning on and on. So I think for a track like this, this is probably the core of how I'm getting started. That's the big pieces of my process, and I'll kind of repeat these sorts of things as I go. I'll have to do a little bit more potentially experimenting with different instruments to find more of these like Viking sounds. Yeah, and then when it comes to like the Bestial Fury and Axe Tempest, maybe more of a motif than a sound. So that'll have to kind of come as I build the track. But yeah, Axe Tempest, some sort of stinger, and Bestial Fury, some sort of increased intensity of note frequency. That's going to be what I'm going to go for. So I'm starting here. We'll see how close it follows when I get to the final product. It'd be kind of fun if you listen to the track and keep the starting point in mind, see how well it matches what you're thinking at this point for anybody who's made it this far. And I will be back in this video. Future Peter will come to explain how things all ended up, hopefully before the August 31st deadline for the competition, and hopefully I get an entry in here. Okay, so we will catch you probably in a few days for me, or a few seconds for you. I won't say too much, but I'll kind of go through a few things. So I did keep these sections intact. I very much shifted them around a bit, made most of them kind of doubled the length, but a few of them did not quite double. But I kept essentially all the sections. The two like the Watcher and the Northerner kind of flavor orchestrations that I put in there, they stuck around. And there's quite a few more things I've added. So I got these vocals in there, which is kind of a bit of a call into Odin's wrath, just more of a lore type of connection than a kit type of connection. Just, the ethereal vocal lines that kind of bring to mind talking about gods and that sort of thing. If we just listen to that a little bit. Yeah, so a bit more of a lamenting sound at the beginning, which I've added some reverb to make it more atmospheric. And then one thing I did, so I've got this intro section here. And this is when the parents are getting slaughtered, when Eivor's parents are getting slaughtered. Love saying that so casually. But anyways, they're killed by Kjotve, and I kind of brought this theme back when kind of to initiate the duel. Also with a bit of her theme from the Shield Maiden section. So here's what it sounds like. And I'll just play them in context. So we gotta kind of have this atmosphere of Kjotve coming in and doing, terrible things when she's a child. And then she comes to this meeting back with him. And I repeated kind of that theme a little bit, but with her theme now cutting in. I think is a fun little throwback. And then I do have a little kind of extra bar in here, and this is just a little flstudio thing for the composers. I like to add sometimes a time signature change when there is kind of an odd number of measures that I put in there. Not because I want to change the time signature, but because it resets the highlighting. So you can see I've got these nice highlights every 4 bars, and then I throw in this extra measure, and it's going to kind of throw off that nice 4-bar shading pattern. But if you put in a time signature, it resets this shading pattern. So it just visually helps me line things up better and see the flow of the song better. Let's see, a couple other things to talk about. The blood bounty. So I chose actually a synth. I'll just play. I chose a synth for that because I feel like it's a little bit intangible. It's more of like a feeling, but also it really helped with 2 things. One is the rage piece, restoring the rage. I just felt like it had this aggression to it. And it also, brings this movement, again, reminiscent of kind of the attack speed that you build with Eivor. So I actually, because I have it going in this section, oops, let me jump back. So in this Shield Maiden section, but then when I jump to the hidden ones, so I didn't talk about this section yet. So we're kind of getting a bit more pensive. A mystery is being revealed. Okay, so that's kind of the feeling there. But if, for those of you who are musically inclined, it's got a more of a 6/8 feel. This is one of the great things about doing any kind of art yourself, is like you don't necessarily know where it's going to take you when you're, let's say, using generative AI. You kind of give it a prompt and it gives you something back kind of as a package, and you don't really explore so much. Here, this kind of, I was exploring, I found this sound I liked, this Better Stay Hidden patch, and I liked it, and I thought I'd build around it, and then I'd kind of make these sections flow into each other, and it's given this cool little 6/8 3/4 kind of triplet feel section. I'd call it a 6/8. And so I did also kind of take this synthesizer, which, by the way, is the Zebra HZ, which is a great one. So I took this preset, which is from a pack I've gotten from somebody, and I changed it to have a 6/8 feel, and I also changed it to have a halftime feel, which comes in during the duel. And then I really only used it for that initial part of the duel. So in this duel section, I'll talk through this a little bit. I have, again, this sort of bestial fury flavor to it where it ramps up in intensity. The orchestration and the different pieces kind of go a bit faster. I mean, it's mostly in the orchestration. You can hear that sort of thing. Let me just see. if I can get these all. Okay, I played that whole thing, but just to show the ramping of intensity as it goes through. Yeah, and like I mentioned at the outset, I did want to do some like full orchestration by hand. So here you're seeing it. Yeah, and then when we come out to the kind of wind. So that sort of theme I brought in the Shield Maiden on the horn is coming through the duel and then in through the triumph section as well. But I do kind of end it off in sort of a bittersweet form. And then we've got this Off to England. Sort of this one here, LCF. Where are you? Laura's Cursed Film. So I've used this library, this contact library, Laura's, and it has kind of moving sort of passages, not moving like orchestrated, but moving like emotive. So let's pull up the mod here. So it kind of has this lamenting sort of feel. And so we've got it here. Oops, I gotta put that up. Yeah, kind of brooding and or lamenting. And so it comes up again as a callback to Kyove. But then I brought it back in here because it's sort of this lament that, you know, things did not turn out exactly as she had hoped. And she's off somewhere else to try and make a difference there. Yeah, and I think, the last thing, I didn't talk about these drums, but I wanted to get some sort of Viking-y sounding drums. So this one here is something called Zero G Element Cinematic Rhythms. Very, very fun percussion library that has lots of these sort of Viking sounding, medieval sounding, like frame drums, those sorts of things. There are a lot of pre-canned rhythm loops in there as well. I didn't use any of them in this track. I put all these in myself in this case, but there are other tracks I've done where I've used some of the pre-canned loops, and they're super helpful, and there's a lot of content in it. It's a great kind of beginner percussion library if you ever need one that's got like the warrior sort of drums, cinematic sort of drums in there. And I think that, the Axe Tempest, I forgot. So this is a plugin by Spitfire Audio. It's one of their originals, the cinematic percussion. And they've got these earthquake hits. I got this as part of a bundle a while back. And I was interested in some other things, but this was a nice addition. And now that I have it, I have been using it quite a bit. The low and high percussion are just kind of standard percussion hits. They're pretty useful in a lot of scenarios, but I wanted this kind of Axe Tempest, in the game. Now in the few days since I started this, I've actually used Eivor a bit, and this axe flies out and it debuffs the enemies, and so it really makes an impact. So I think it's good to have this sound, because I do see it as something that makes an impact, and I've kind of tried to put this in through the song, kind of as in various intervals. So I did go through that in quite a bit of detail. Hopefully that was useful. Anyways, as I said before, if anybody's watching this and you have comments, opinions about this format versus the format I did for the Idril video, please let me know, and I can take that going forward. If the content creator program goes through, I will keep this up. If not, I may just stick with posting the tracks. I might do hollow because it's more synth heavy. It might be kind of an interesting look at some of the synth side. But these take quite a bit of work, so I don't know how long I'll be able to keep this up, just kind of for fun. But hopefully it's been helpful to those of you that watch, and we'll catch you around.